Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Katie. I'm a reader. Clearly you are too. Did not mean to rhyme there. Okay, we're gonna move on. Yeah, so I didn't do a wrap up for August, and I read for the end of September. Did I do a wrap up for August? I don't think I did. I think I did July. But I wanted to go through everything that I read this whole year because there are quite a few books that I read at the beginning of the year that I didn't record. I wasn't actually recording and posting on my BookTube channel at that point. So I wanted to go through everything because there were probably 4 or 5 different books that I read that I haven't documented on my channel. So I've read 18 so far this year, and we're going to go through each one. I'm going to try to do them in as close of the order that I read them as I can, but I don't quite remember the exact order I read the ones that I read earlier in the year. I know I started in January and I read a couple, and then I, like early March, into February, I read a couple. So I'm going to try and go through them with you as best as I can. So I have a pretty wide range of books that I enjoy reading, so I've tried to keep to that as I've read throughout this year. I do try to open myself up. I don't really love romance novels, especially the cheesy ones, because I cringe at things very easily. So let me see, I think I missed a couple. I definitely read more than that this year. Wait, I've read more than 18 this year then? Hold on, let me go through my read ones and make sure that they are all coded to the right year. Oh, I have read more books this year than I thought. Okay, hold on, okay, I think this is all of them. It was really just adding the one. So the first one that I read, and I think I started it right at the end of December, but I read most of it in January, so I counted it towards this year, was Midnight Showing by Megan Shepherd. It is the second in a duology. The first one is Malice House, which I read a couple years ago, and then the second that she posted that she was putting this out, I immediately bought one for myself and for my sister because we both really love her books. She definitely has a more young adult style of writing. It is like fantasy with like a subplot of romance, and then I don't know, I feel like fantasy is kind of the best way to describe it. The first book is basically her father passes away and she goes into the house. Where is it? It's like an upstate Massachusetts, above Boston, north of Boston, on the water. And she finds this manuscript called Malice House, and she ends up basically discovering that her dad writes stories that basically come to life, and when she draws them, she has it too. Some kind of genetic thing. Not totally sure the specifics because it's been a long time since I read that one. And it's the journey of that, and she ends up falling in love with a particular person in there. And then basically it's a continuation from here into the second book, where she finds out that she has a relative who made movies, and kind of the same thing happened, and she has to try and stop these things from coming out and killing people. So some of the characters from the first book come into the second book, and it was really good. I ate this up pretty quickly. I think it took me less than a week to read it, which is at the time for me pretty quickly. It was very good. I don't remember what I rated this. I may not have rated it. What did I rate this? Oh, I haven't rated this book. I would say it has a 3.83 on Goodreads. I would say 4 is pretty accurate. I really liked the book. There were a couple things I was like, that's dumb. I don't love that. But that happens sometimes when you pick up authors and duologies or trilogies, or things just kind of continue on and you're like, I don't love that. But the first one was incredible. This one I would give probably 4 stars. Oh yes, the second one that I read, I think I read this at the end of February, beginning of March, was Killers of the Flower Moon. I read this years ago for book club, but I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't care for it. It was really hard for me to get through. It's very factual. There's a lot of information. The chapters really jump between giving you facts and then telling you the story of what happened. So basically, this follows the Osage murders that happen of the Native Americans who were in Oklahoma. They were the Osage tribe. They were slowly getting murdered, and there was an investigation going on. It's kind of how the FBI came to be, and they talk about that. But there was like a whole chapter on J. Edgar Hoover's office that I did not care. I skipped it. I'm not gonna lie. I don't care what his office smelled like or how much crap and he had his office. I don't care. So it was a little hard to get through at times for me. I would probably give this, because I don't think I rated it on here. I didn't. I would probably give this, it has a 4.14 star on here. For me, it was like 3.5, but it's only because it's hard to get through the factual stuff. But the author was very, very thorough. He went to Oklahoma, where the actual Osage murders happened, and this was in the early 1900s, and there are still ancestors there from the people who were killed. There are still family members. They still very much every year memorialize what happened to bring attention to what happened, because basically the murders were happening because the Osage were very wealthy, because they had all the royalty money from all the oil drilling and everything out there. But the government, the federal government, basically deemed them incapable and too dumb to keep track of their own finances. So they would pick some old white dude in town, a lawyer, a doctor, typically a lawyer or a banker or something like that, but like someone that they thought was more capable of keeping track of things for them, to keep track of things. If they needed groceries, they needed to ask. If they needed to take their kid to the doctor, they needed to ask. And a lot of times they said no, and their children were dying. So it was really a real tragic event. Hard to read it sometimes, but I will say I'm really excited to watch the movie. I know it came out, I think, at least a year ago, if not more. But that's what prompted me to pick the book back up and reread it, because I was interested in the movie. I know the movie is probably going to have a lot more of the plot of the actual murders of Osage, so less information on J. Edgar Hoover's office, so I'm looking forward to that. But I would say 3.5 stars, pretty good read if you like historical fiction and historical books. I would definitely pick this up. All right, the next book I read was another Megan Shepherd book, and it was The Secret Horses of Briar Hill. I picked this up because I love her writing. I didn't know how it was going to be. The quote on the front from Kirkus Reviews, I don't know who that is, says it's reminiscent of the Chronicles of Narnia. Readers will love this to pieces. And I will say, it read fairly young. I know she does more of like the young adult type stuff, so I kind of was expecting that, but it was definitely more younger than I thought. And then I got to the end and it did kind of make me cry a little bit. I would definitely give this 4 stars. It was a really quick read. It's not that many pages at all. I think it's like 225. Not many pages at all. Very good book. Would definitely recommend this. I think pretty much anybody of any, I don't know what the reading level of this book is, but I think if you can read a novel, you would really like this book. Yeah, it says it just deserves a spot on the shelf next to the most beloved children's classics. Yes, even The Secret Garden. And I have to agree with that. It was very, very good. Very well written. It's basically this girl who sees these winged horses in the mirrors in her home that she's living in. I don't remember the exact time frame that this was, but she keeps trying to tell people, you know, they're there, do you not see them? And her friends are like, no, we don't see them. And then you kind of understand that this is actually a tuberculosis home for young children. They call it the sickness or the illness throughout the whole thing. And you're kind of like, I can't really tell what it is, but you know, death happens and it's very sad, especially from a child's perspective. You get to see her grieve a good friend, and it's very sad. And I'm literally tearing up thinking about it. Anyway, we're gonna move on before I cry, but it is a very good book and I would definitely recommend this for you. Okay, another one I read, I think this is the last one that I read that I hadn't documented on my channel, and that was Whiskey Beach. Whiskey Beach by Nora Roberts. Bit of a chonker, but very, very good. Another one that I read years ago in a book club that I wanted to pick up again. It is basically like a mystery thriller. Landon? I think his name's Landon. You know what? I think it says Eli Landon has come home to Whiskey Beach, where he comes up against a woman with his best interest at heart and a past that brings out the worst in a man. So basically, he goes to the house on Whiskey Beach because his grandmother lives there and she was injured. And then you find out what really happened, and they're trying to get her memory back, and he ends up falling in love with the neighbor. And there is like a couple of spicy scenes in it, so I will warn you about that. But it was very good. Such a good writer. She is an incredible writer. There's a reason she's written as many books as she has. And I would definitely recommend this if you like mystery thriller with like subplot romance. That's kind of my thing. I don't love romance. It can be really cringy. And at times, I'm not gonna lie, it was a little cringy. But it was very well written. I'm glad I picked it up again this year, because when I first read it, I wasn't sure that I loved it, and then it ended up being like one of my favorite books. So definitely recommend really anything by Nora Roberts, but she's a great writer. All right, I'm just gonna go down this, or back up this list, I should say, in no specific order. I think the next two maybe that I read were The Cage and The Hunt by Megan Shepherd also. I did read those on my channel. I think actually The Cage was the first reading vlog I did. I read that in a day and it was very good. Not as good as I was hoping. I think I gave it like 3. Oh, I hadn't rated it. I'm pretty sure I gave it like 3.5 stars, 3.75 stars. And I would probably give the second one the same. I have the third that I just haven't read. I haven't picked it up at all. So basically it is, there's a girl who wakes up in this desert after she gets into an accident involving her family, and then she's put in this weird simulation world with 5 or 6 other people. And basically they're told, okay, well now you need to do this and you need to do that, and if you don't, we'll take you out. And you don't know really very much at the beginning. It's basically like a dystopian world where there are other species and they're trying to prove that the human race is one of the higher intelligence species. It kind of goes on from there. It's a little confusing at first, and I'm not a big dystopian sci-fi person, but I really love Megan Shepherd. I thought it was written fairly well. I actually liked the second one more than the first one. There was just too much like confusion, I think, the world building for me. But basically that's the gist of it. And then they end up in the third one, it's called The Gauntlet. So the first one, The Cage, is the simulation world they're in. They're being told what the rules are. They need to follow them or they'll be taken out. The second one, basically the time was up and they were put in to continue to work for them because they didn't prove that they were of the high intelligence that they were looking for. The third book is The Gauntlet, which is basically this trial that they're supposed to run to then prove that they are of a high intelligence. I haven't read that one. It ended up with them the second book ended up with them trying to flee, but they don't know where they're going, so I don't know why they even tried that. But I'm gonna read it this year, hopefully, by the end of this year, and get that trilogy done. One of the next ones that I read was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Now, I originally got this on the Kindle, and that's where I read it, so I picked up the physical copy fairly recently this year, and I gave it to my sister to read. So good. I finished it so quickly. Kind of devastating, to be honest with you, to read some of the stuff, but it really is about her life in show business as a kid and her life at home with her mother, who was abusive in many different ways, and the weird family dynamics that they had. It's pretty devastating and upsetting to read, but I would recommend it if you are somebody who really likes memoirs but also really likes fictional novels, because it really does read like a story and not like a let me sit down, let me tell you about my life kind of thing. It really is incredible, and they're doing, I don't know if they're doing a movie or a limited series, but I'm so excited about it. And they just announced that I think next year or 2027 she's coming out with a novel, which I'm really looking forward to. She clearly is a good writer. I originally read it on my Kindle because I could not find a physical copy of the book at the time. I think that was like 2.5 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago at the time. But I ended up getting this on thrift books recently so I could have the physical copy on my bookshelf. So another one I read this year that I had already read, I think, twice before, but I wanted to reread and annotate, was Water for Elephants. I've talked about this a couple times. I annotated the whole thing. I actually ran out of tabs while I was annotating. Yeah, so I reread it and then I watched the movie right after, and there was a lot of difference between the two. I would really love to do like book versus movie kind of things. It hasn't worked out for like filming purposes and things so far yet. But it basically follows the life of Jacob Jankowski, whose parents die suddenly the day he's supposed to take his final vet exam, and he finds out that there is no money. His dad has not been taking any money for his vet services, so the business basically is owned by the bank. The house is owned by the bank. He doesn't have a car. He has nothing, and so he just decides to go on a walk one day. Sitting by the river, he hears a train and goes, I'm getting out of here. So he jumps the train, finds out that it is a circus train, and basically joins the circus. But it was very good. He falls in love with the horse girl, Marlena. I can't remember exactly what she was, like, what her title for the show was, but she was basically one of the main acts, if not the main act, and there's a lot of drama, and he has to kind of dig deep in his morals to make decisions, and their story's really interesting. It's a very good book. I would definitely recommend it. It has really good ratings on Goodreads. It has 4.11 stars, which I think is pretty accurate to the book, in my opinion. I think I gave it 5 stars, to be honest with you. But after like a few rereads of a book, I feel like I tend to like the book more, because clearly I'm coming back to it. And I'm not opposed to changing my ratings on books in the future, whether it goes up or down. So I would recommend this. There is a couple of scenes in the book that are, I don't know, R-rated? I don't know, like spicy scenes like that. The movie was PG-13, and it is very different. It's very descriptive in the book. It is not like that in the movies, but very good movie. Cast kind of odd, Robert Pattinson and Reese Witherspoon, but I think the movie was made in like 2008, 2010, something like that. But yes, I did read that this year, and it was very good. I would definitely recommend it. The one book this year that I read that I gave 6 stars to that was utterly devastating, The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. The Nightingale basically follows 2 sisters who live in France. It starts out at the beginning of the break of World War II, and then it kind of follows what happens in their lives throughout the entirety of the war. It's devastating, and I'm glad I wasn't recording when I read the ending of the book, because I quite literally was like, it was bad. It was ugly cry me, but honestly, it was really, really like so incredibly written. It does jump perspective between the younger sister, who's about 19, Isabel, and then the older sister, whose name has just completely left my brain. Oh, Vianne, that's her name, who I think is in like her early 20s or her late 20s, because she does have a younger daughter and she's been married for some time. The daughter was about 8 at the beginning of the war, and she got pregnant in her early 20s, so I think she's either in her late 20s or right about 30. I'm not totally sure, but it really is devastating, the experiences that they went through. I had no idea that France was that affected in World War II. I don't feel like I learned crap in school when they taught us about World War II. It was such a fantastic book. I would definitely recommend it to you if you like historical fiction. There is a bit of romance thrown in here and there, but not in like a subplot. Maybe it was kind of a subplot kind of way. But when you think about war, and especially World War II, a lot of what got people through was looking to the future, the things that they could do, and they made connections with people, and they fell in love despite literally fighting for their lives constantly. So yes, I would recommend really anything written by her, but The Nightingale was incredible. I then immediately picked up another Kristen Hanna book, Firefly Lane. I specifically picked that up because I had seen the Netflix show, which was so good. I literally binged it until I think I watched it in like a whole weekend. It's so good. The show was good. The book was amazing. Definitely gave that 5 stars. 6 stars for The Nightingale, but that one was definitely 5 stars. Another sad, devastating book. But basically it talks about Tilly and Kate, who end up being neighbors when they're like freshman or sophomore in high school, and they become basically instant best friends. They experience so much up and down throughout life, and basically it's the journey of Kate, who ends up getting breast cancer later in life, and her experiences. And they have very different lives. Tilly ends up being Tully ends up being a big anchor woman. She becomes very famous, very rich, very wealthy. She's single, she doesn't have a family. That's the life that she wanted. Kate ends up getting married, having a kid. Their lives are very different, but they still remain best friends. And I do have to say, they took liberties in the show that I didn't love, but I did understand why. It did make sense to me. That being said, another devastating book. I cried, I wept. I actually think I caught that on camera. So I do have a vlog where I read both of them at the same time, right before my period started. Really great time for that. I ended up reading 2 books by an author. I read the first one, and I wasn't crazy about it, but it was The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I was really excited about this because my favorite trilogy by Megan Shepherd, the first book starts out with Juliet, who is the daughter of Henry Moreau. And if you don't know that storyline, it's basically Henry Moreau is crossing animal and human DNA and creating these beasts. That's kind of the folklore, I guess, behind it all. And he has this island where he's doing all these secret experiments and things. So I was really looking forward to seeing a completely different perspective, not just in the circumstances, but in the culture, because basically this one was set in Mexico, outside of Mexico City, in a very rural area. I can't remember the name of the town. I don't think it was a real town, because I think I looked it up. But I didn't care for it. And it was basically her being whiny, and they were the hybrids they were taking care of the human animal things. And then Montgomery comes in and basically becomes like a secondhand guy to her dad. And then they kind of fall in love, but they don't end up together. I just didn't really love the book. I just didn't love it. I almost DNF'd it, but I was like, I was looking forward to this so much, I'll finish reading it. I didn't give it great rating. So it has a 3.5, and I think I gave it a 3. So 3.5 on Goodreads, and I think I gave it 3, which to me is fair. And then I ended up picking up Mexican Gothic, which is another one of Silvia Moreno Garcia's books, and I DNF'd it at like 20 pages. I think it's just the prose. I don't like the prose of the author. It's just my particular, what I look for in books. It just was not my thing. So I did donate those to the Little Free Library, which actually got picked up very quickly. They weren't in the best of shape. They were kind of taped back together, but that's kind of the risk you get with buying used books. I then read another historical fiction, World War II, based on a true story, and that was Beneath a Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan. So it basically follows Pino, who at the beginning of when the war kind of comes to Italy is 17, and his family sends him off to live in like a Catholic boys' home kind of thing to help keep him safe, but he ends up aiding in getting refugees out of the country at 17. I mean, it's incredible what he did. And these were obviously like true stories, but they were kind of somewhat fictionalized in a way, probably dramatized more than anything else, because he spent 10 years with the guy helping him write this story. So he ends up basically becoming part of the resistance and becoming the driver to the big arms guy for the Nazis in Italy, because he can speak German, which they don't know, and he is good with cars. So he basically gets the guy fired, not intentionally. He goes to help him, and then the Nazi guy was like, oh, you're good with cars? You're fired. You're my new guy. But it's really devastating what happens throughout the book. It did make me cry, and it did make me mad and upset. It is a great book. I would give it 5 stars. I'm pretty sure it has, let me see what it has on Goodreads. 4.43 stars. That's fair. I loved the book. It was so good. But I do have to say, it is hard to read some of the stuff. Pretty graphic at some points. Same with The Nightingale. Some of the stuff was pretty graphic, but this one, Mussolini was apparently involved with Hitler, which I did not know. And when the war was over, they basically dragged him out and killed his mistress, and did things to their body, which I thought was horrific and disgusting, After everything that happened, people are still resorting to that kind of revenge. I want to say I understand, but it was really gross to read. But it wasn't even just that. There was other things that it was really hard to read. But I would highly, highly recommend that you read this book. It is so well regarded and it is so well written. So good. All right, the next few books that I read were The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which was a fantastic book. Basically, Evelyn Hugo has all these marriages throughout her life, and she sits down with a journalist that she specifically picks and says, if it's her, great. If it's not her, nobody's going to know this story. So she sits down, and the journalist is like, but why me? And she's like, you'll understand. I'll tell you when we're done. You can publish this. You're going to make millions of dollars off of this. And she gives her like full access to the things that happened. Every marriage that she went through, all of the experiences that she had. There is something in the book that if I tell you, it will give away the entire storyline. So I'm not going to do it, but I would recommend that you read it. It was so interesting. It reminded me of The Great Gatsby in a way, because she was in like the 40s and 50s as an actress, and now she's older and she is talking about it and all of that. There are a couple trigger warnings in it. Fair warning, if you really want to know more specifically about the plot of the book, Look it up. It has really good ratings. I think I gave it 4.5 or 4 stars. I think I gave it 4 stars in my video. It has 4.4 on Goodreads, which is pretty good. And then after that, I read Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, which is basically Louisa Clark is living in a small village and her family is struggling financially. And so a lot of what she does for work, when she worked at the cafe, a lot of it went to really living at home, helping pay bills and things like that. And then she gets laid off unexpectedly. She ends up taking a job as a caregiver to a quadriplegic man who had been in an accident, and she finds out some things and tries to kind of be his friend and change his perspective on life. The movie was pretty decent, I feel like. I had actually seen the movie and wanted to read the book. I wasn't crazy about the book. I'm sorry. I don't think it was that terrible, but I wasn't really that crazy about it. So another one that I recently read, actually the last 4 are the ones that I read at the end of September. I lent it to my sister, so I don't have the book, but it is Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. I think that's how you say that. It was such a good book. It is just over 300 pages, I think, so it's not a super long read. So basically, there's a woman, Rowan, who gets washed ashore to this island where a family of 4, Dominic the dad, Orly is the youngest son, then Fennis the teenage sister, and then Raph is the oldest teenage boy. And they bring her in, they nurse her back to health, and then they're trying to figure out where she came from, because this is literally in between Australia and Antarctica. And there's a seed bank that they're trying to kind of keep safe. All their communications went down. There's a lot of mystery involved. People are lying to each other. You don't really know what's going on until probably the last 30 pages of the book. It was very highly regarded on Haley Pham's channel. I think she gave it 5 stars. I gave it 4 because I felt like the characters were so easily swayed from their opinions and decisions that it kind of took away from the story for me. But it was very, very good. It was sad. It jumped perspective between all of them, and you could kind of tell when you were reading, Orly, who was the 8-year-old, the youngest boy. You could tell it was him. Like, it sounded like him when you read it. And then it went to Rowan, and you could feel that it was her. You could feel that it was Dominic or Fen or Raph. You could hear it in the tone of the writing, which I thought was incredible, and I can imagine very difficult to do. But it was very good. I picked it up at Marshall's on sale during my book buying bin because I really wanted to read it. And I have to say it was very good. I would definitely recommend it. It's more mystery, kind of thriller than anything, but there are a couple of spicy scenes in there I would recommend if you're over 18. I then ended up reading the second half of Practical Magic. I actually started it at the beginning of September when I was trying to pull myself out of that depression reading slump that I was in. And it was really hard, but I had read half the book over the course of a few weeks, and then I ended up picking it up during that reading vlog to finish, and it was very okay. The narrator basically just told you what was happening. You got some dialogue here and there. That's kind of all that it was, which I didn't love. I'm gonna be real with you. I didn't love that. I think that was kind of my biggest problem with the book. I like to, be a fly on the wall in conversations, basically, when I'm reading. Also, the storyline was completely different than the movie, which was, honestly, looking at the movie, I like the movie better. I hate to say it, but the way that they did the movie and what they took out of the book and the order that they put it in made a ton of sense. The book was confusing and weird and did not really make that much sense. I don't know. It basically follows the 2 sisters who are witches, but one of them kind of denies it, and then Sally, the sister whose husband passes away, takes the girls to a completely different place, raises them there away from everybody so she can kind of fit in and not be, regarded as the hex witches, basically. They end up calling in their witch aunts for help, basically. It's a very simple description of the book, but that is basically the gist of it. I wasn't crazy about it, but I think I gave it 3.5 stars, something like that. I immediately then picked up the Tattooist of Auschwitz, which is based on a true story. So Lale Sokolov, so basically they forcibly transported the Jewish people in Slovakia to concentration camps under the guise of, you're going to work for the government. and it ends up being basically, here's your tiny piece of bread every day, you're now our prisoner. He ends up being put to work as the person who tattoos the numbers on everybody that has come in to the camp. And he meets a woman named Gita, falls in love with her, and things that he witnesses and experiences is disgusting and devastating. It was a very different perspective on a World War II book, historical fiction. Not a long read. I read it literally in one night and the next morning. I just couldn't put it down. I would give it 4.5 stars, 100%. But basically he goes through all of these different things. They find out that he's taking the jewels and the people are helping him, but he won't say who's helping him because he knows that they'll get killed and he'll get killed and there's no point. And he ends up making friends, and a sad, devastating story to read. But this is the first time I've read a book from the perspective of someone who was in a concentration camp, especially based on a true story of all the experiences that this man experienced. It was hard to read and devastating, but such a good read. I would highly recommend this if you like historical fiction. There is a character in this that Heather Morris writes about in another book, but I think it was mostly fictionalized because she only gets a few informational things from when she wrote this one and then kind of continues the story on. So I don't know that I'm going to read that. I don't love that. If you've already written one that was a true story and you got to sit down with this person and hear the story and then write it, I don't know, it just feels weird to kind of backtrack from that. And the last book that I will talk about, because it is the most recent one that I read, other than the reading vlog that I'm filming, is With a Vengeance by Riley Sager. This was not on my TBR at all. My sister got it, suggested that I read it, gave it to me, I read it. It was so good. I will say she did warn me it was a little bit slow at the beginning, which I fully expected, and there were definitely times where it dragged on. It gave full-on like Clue, Knives Out feel. That's basically what it was. Not what it was, but that's the whole vibe of it. This woman who loses her father, her brother gets killed, and then her mother commits suicide, and it all comes down to this horrible plot that this group of 6 people were involved in. So she lures them onto this train that does not stop until it gets from Philadelphia to Chicago, where the FBI has all of the information on the case to prove that her father was innocent, and what happened, and that they were guilty of all this stuff. And it's basically what happens on the train. There's more death, there is confusion, there is people that aren't supposed to be there, people that were supposed to be there didn't show up. So she's kind of trying to basically get them to confess before they get to Chicago, but she's delivering them to the FBI. So very interesting, very well written. I definitely want to pick up more by Riley Sager. I don't know, I think there's a couple at Walmart actually that I could get. But it was very good. I think I would give it 4 stars, I would say. A little bit slow at the beginning, but very well written. Definitely really good cliffhangers at the end of the chapters where you're like, wait a minute, what? And then you're like, okay, I did not see that coming. There was one thing I guessed. One thing. And one thing I suspected that ended up being true. But yeah, anyway. Those are the 19 books that I've read this year. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope this was interesting. I didn't do very many wrap-ups this year. I think I only did maybe one. And I'll probably do one again at the end of the year, because the way that my reading vlogs are, I'm actually crossing months at the moment. So I'm not going to do specifically this month and that month and that month, especially because I have all the vlogs that you guys can go back and look at. So anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope this is helpful. I hope that you pick up some of these books. I did donate a few of them, and some of them are lent out, but for the most part, all of the books that I've read, with exception of there's one shelf up there that I have read, and then there's one on this side that I have not read. Those are my Harry Potter books, but there's 3, 4, 5 cubes of books that I have read this year. Not this year, in general, of the books that I have. And then all the rest of these I have not read. So I ended up actually picking up the second Housemaid book because I had the first one. Got it at Marshall's for $6. Freaking deal. I think I got this one for $9. So I have about another 12 books that I want to read this year. That really just gets me through the end of October because of the way my reading vlogs are. My goal, I changed from a book a month from the beginning of the year to 35, I think. So if I'm at 19, plus I just finished one for another reading vlog, and I'm starting my other one, which will be at least 2. I think it's doable. I think I can get there. If not, then you know what? I read more than most people do in a year, and I think that's pretty great. So anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling because my throat is dry and I need water. Anyway, thank you for joining me. And if you read any of these books, let me know. I'd be curious to see what you've read this year. So make a comment in the comments below. Anyway, I will see you later. Okay, bye.